The massive space station called Concordia Prime floated in the darkness between star systems. Inside its Grand Council chamber, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in a wide circle. The room was designed to make everyone feel equal, but the tension in the air told a different story. Admiral Marcus Webb stood at the human delegation table, his gray uniform perfectly pressed. Next to him, Ambassador Rita Okonkwo reviewed data on her tablet, her face showing the exhaustion of 3 months of negotiations. Across from them, Counselor Thane Viridius lounged in his seat, his scaled reptilian body draped, casually as if this entire meeting bored him. The talks have been going in circles for weeks now. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to accept terms that Webb found impossible. They demanded Earth surrender 70% of its military fleet. They wanted human colonies to accept Council governors. They insisted on placing monitoring stations throughout human space to ensure compliance with galactic law. Webb had tried compromise after compromise. He offered joint military exercises. He suggested trade agreements and cultural exchanges. He proposed a gradual integration over 50 years. Every offer was rejected. High Arbiter Quelix, an ancient insectoid being who supposedly mediated these discussions fairly, clicked his mandibles together. His compound eyes reflected the lights of the chamber as he spoke in his translated mechanical voice. Admiral Webb, your species has expanded into 42 star systems in just 50 years since first contact. This is unprecedented, reckless. Other species took centuries to claim such territory. The Council has legitimate concerns about human aggression. Webb kept his voice level and calm. We expanded into uninhabited systems. We've harmed no one. Every human colony was built on lifeless worlds that no other species wanted. Counselor Viridius laughed, a hissing sound that echoed through the chamber. Uninhabited? You mean systems we hadn't bothered to claim yet. Your species breeds like parasites and spreads across space with no regard for established order. Ambassador Okonkwo stood up, her dark eyes flashing with controlled anger. Counselor, we've been patient with insults throughout these negotiations. But calling humans parasites crosses a line. We came here in good faith. Viridius waved a clawed hand dismissively. Good faith? Your military builds new warships every month. Your scientists develop weapons technology at an alarming rate. You are children playing with fire, and the adults in this galaxy must supervise you before you burn everything down. Webb noticed other council members nodding in agreement. The avian Chancellor Brevix, usually sympathetic to humanity, looked away uncomfortably. The massive slug-like representative from the Dulmer Consortium pulsed with colors that indicated agreement with Viridius. Perhaps, Webb said carefully, the Council fears competition rather than aggression. Human technology has advanced rapidly, yes, but we've shared our medical discoveries freely. Our agricultural techniques have helped feed 3 species facing famine. We've acted as good galactic citizens. High Arbiter Quelix made a grinding sound, which makes your military expansion even more concerning. Why does a species so focused on peace need such a powerful fleet? Because the galaxy isn't peaceful, Webb replied. We've already been attacked twice by pirates. Our colony ships have been harassed by unlicensed raiders. We need to protect our people. Then accept Council protection, Viridius said, leaning forward. Surrender your fleet to Council command? We'll ensure your safety. You'll have no need for weapons. Webb shook his head. That's not protection. That's subjugation. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, hissing, and electronic protests from the various species. Quelix raised his forearms, calling for silence. When the room quieted, his voice carried a harder edge. Admiral, the Council has been more than patient. We've allowed these talks to continue far longer than normal protocol suggests. But humanity's stubborn refusal to accept guidance forces us to consider other options. Something in those words made Webb's spine stiffen. What other options? Quelix was silent for a moment. Then he gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of known space. Human territory glowed in blue. Surrounding it, red markers appeared at various points. Council peacekeeping fleets, Quelix said. Positioned near human space over the past 2 months. Not to threaten, you understand. Merely to ensure stability during these negotiations. Webb stared at the map. Those weren't peacekeeping positions. They were blockade formations? Military staging areas? He felt Ambassador Okonkwo tense beside him. You've been preparing for war while pretending to negotiate peace, Webb said quietly. We've been preparing to enforce council law, Viridius corrected, his teeth showing in what might have been a smile. Your species will accept council authority. The only question is whether you do so voluntarily or by force. Chancellor Brevix finally spoke up, his feathered crest flattened in distress. Surely we can find middle ground. Admiral Webb, perhaps if humanity agreed to temporary monitoring by fleets positioned to invade our space? Webb interrupted. Chancellor, I respect you, but this entire negotiation has been theater. You've already decided to move against us. Quelix's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Council offers you one final opportunity, Admiral. You have 24 hours to return to Earth and convince your government to accept our terms. Full terms. No compromises. If Earth refuses, humanity will be declared a rogue civilization. Council fleets will enforce compliance. The chamber fell silent. Webb looked at each council member in turn. Some couldn't meet his eyes. Others, like Viridius, stared back with barely concealed satisfaction. 24 hours, Webb repeated. To surrender everything humans have built? Everything we are? To accept your proper place in galactic civilization, Quelix corrected. As all species must. Ambassador Okonkwo gathered her data tablets. Her hands were steady, but Webb knew her well enough to see the fury she was controlling. She looked up at the council. We came here hoping for partnership, she said. We believe the galaxy operated on principles of mutual respect and cooperation. We were wrong. This council operates on domination, on fear of anything you can't control. Chancellor Brevix began, but she cut him off. 24 hours? We don't need 24 minutes. Here's Earth's answer. No, we will not surrender our freedom. We will not become subjects of this council. We will remain independent. Viridius stood up, his full height impressive and threatening. Then you choose extinction. Foolish primates. Admiral Webb closed his datapad carefully. He'd been a military man for 40 years. He'd fought in 3 wars before humanity ever met aliens. He knew when negotiation ended and survival began. He met Viridius's eyes without flinching. We're done here, Webb said simply. He turned and walked toward the exit, Ambassador Okonkwo beside him. The council chamber erupted in protest behind them, voices calling them back, demanding they reconsider. Webb didn't turn around. Neither did OKONKWO. As they walked down the long corridor toward their docked ship, Okonkwo finally spoke. They're really going to do it. They're going to attack us. Yes, Webb agreed. They've probably already given the orders. Their ship, the diplomatic vessel Unity, waited in the docking bay. The human crew stood at attention as Webb and Okonkwo boarded. Within minutes, they were departing Concordia Prime. On the bridge, Webb opened a secure channel to Earth Command. This is Admiral Webb. Peace talks have failed. Council has issued an ultimatum backed by military force. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Exodus. The response came quickly. Confirmed, Admiral. Protocol Exodus is authorized. All human vessels are being recalled. Military assets proceeding to designated positions. Webb looked out at the stars as Unity jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, he knew the Galactic Council was celebrating. Believing humanity would crumble before their superior numbers, they had no idea what was coming throughout human space. On 42 colony worlds and hundreds of stations, people received the same message. Pack essential items only. Report to evacuation centers immediately. This is not a drill. On Earth, massive ships that had been secretly under construction for years began powering up their engines. Scientists activated equipment that had never been tested at full scale. Military commanders opened sealed orders they'd hoped would never be necessary. and in the darkness of space, human warships went silent. They didn't retreat, they didn't power down. They simply vanished from every sensor, every tracking system, every method the Council used to monitor the galaxy. High Arbiter Quelix received the first reports an hour after the human delegation departed. Every human civilian ship was returning to human space. Every trading vessel, every exploration craft, every science station, all of them moving at maximum speed back toward Earth. "They're running," Viridius said with satisfaction. "Abandoning their outlying colonies? This will be easier than expected." But a junior analyst noticed something else in the data, something that made her antenna quiver with confusion. She brought it to Quelix's attention. "High Arbiter, the civilian ships are retreating. But the human military vessels, they're not moving? Not moving?" Quelix examined the data. "You mean they're holding defensive positions? No, High Arbiter. I mean we've lost all tracking data on them. Every human warship has disappeared from our sensors simultaneously. Over 800 vessels, just ... The celebration in the council chamber died down as this information spread. Viridius dismissed it as technical malfunction or human jamming technology. But Quelix, who had lived for 3 centuries and survived 2 galactic wars, felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Humanity had walked away from the negotiating table without fear. They had rejected the Council's ultimatum without hesitation. And now their entire civilization was moving in a coordinated pattern that suggested planning, preparation, purpose. What did humans know that the Council didn't? The question would haunt Quelix in the days to come, because humanity's response to the Council's threat wasn't surrender or defiance, or even war. It was something far more disturbing. It was silence. 3 days passed since the peace talks collapsed. In that time, the Galactic Council assembled the largest military force in recent history. Over 3,000 warships from 8 different species gathered in formation. They called it a peacekeeping armada. Everyone knew it was an invasion fleet. War leader Gronther commanded the Kryn Empire's contribution to the fleet. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Blood Triumph, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. 2,000 Kryn warships alone made up the bulk of the force. The other species had contributed smaller numbers. But still impressive, Gronther was a massive being, even for his species. Thick armored plates covered his body, and his forearms ended in claws sharp enough to tar through steel. He'd fought in 17 battles across his career and never lost. He expected this operation to be added to his victories. A simple one. "Approaching human colony of New Haven," his tactical officer reported. "No defensive formations detected. No military vessels in the area," Gronther grunted. "They abandoned it, as we expected. Cowards ran back to their homeworld." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system. The colony world hung in space ahead of them, a green and blue sphere that humans had spent 10 years terraforming. Cities dotted the surface, visible from orbit. Lights still glowed from the settlements, but something was wrong. "Commander," another officer called out, "we're receiving no communications from the surface. No distress signals, no surrender broadcasts, no threats. Nothing. Scan the planet," Gronther ordered. The results came back quickly. Power plants were running. Life support systems in the cities remained active. Agricultural domes showed normal function. But biosigns read 0. Not a single human life form anywhere on the planet. "They evacuated everyone," the tactical officer said, confused, "but left everything else running." Why? Gronther considered this. It made no sense militarily. If humans wanted to deny the Council these colonies, they should have destroyed the infrastructure. Instead, they'd abandoned functioning cities intact. Perhaps they thought we'd be merciful if they left peacefully, Gronther decided. Order landing parties to secure the colony. Post garrison forces. This world now belongs to the Council. Troop transports descended to New Haven's surface while the main fleet settled into orbit. Gronther watched the reports come in from multiple landing sites. Every city was the same. Empty streets, running power grids, food still in storage facilities. Like everyone had simply vanished, one report troubled him more than others. In the colony's central administrative building, computers were still active. Files remained accessible. It was as if the humans had left in such a hurry. They hadn't even tried to wipe their data, or they didn't care if the council saw it far across the system. Hidden in an asteroid belt, Captain Leora Vasquez watched the alien occupation through telescopes and passive sensors. Her ship, the stealth corvette Ghostwatch, had been stationed here for 2 weeks, waiting. They're landing troops on New Haven, her sensor officer reported. Looks like they're planning to stay. Captain Vasquez was young for her command, only 32 years old. But she'd earned her position through skill and unconventional thinking. Right now, her unconventional thinking wanted her to attack the alien fleet. Her orders demanded she do nothing. No engagement, she reminded her crew. We observe only. Captain, there are 3,000 enemy ships out there, her weapons officer said. And we're just watching them take our colony? Those are the orders, Vasquez said firmly. Direct from Earth Command, observe, record, do not engage under any circumstances. Her crew didn't like it. Neither did she. But Admiral Webb's final transmission had been clear. Every human military vessel received the same instructions. Pull back to designated positions. Maintain stealth protocols. Wait for the signal. What signal? Nobody knew. That was the worst part. Over the next 48 hours, the same pattern repeated across human space. The Council's peacekeeping armada split into smaller fleets and approached human colonies. Every world they reached was abandoned. Not destroyed. Not defended. Just empty, 15 colonies, 30 mining stations, 5 major shipyard facilities, all evacuated, all infrastructure intact. No humans anywhere. War leader Gronther grew increasingly frustrated. He'd expected resistance, battle, glory. Instead, he was becoming a glorified property manager, posting guards on empty buildings and trying to figure out where millions of humans had gone. It's impossible, his strategic advisor insisted. You can't evacuate 15 colonies in 3 days. Not completely. Some people always refuse to leave. Children get separated from parents. Elderly can't travel quickly. But we found no one. Not one human anywhere. Gronther stared at the tactical map showing occupied human territory. They planned this. Long before the peace talks collapsed. They had evacuation procedures ready. But why abandon everything? The advisor asked. These colonies represent decades of human effort. Billions of credits in infrastructure. They just left it for us to take. That question bothered Gronther more than he wanted to admit. Humans had a reputation for being stubborn and resourceful. This felt wrong. Like a trap? But what kind of trap involved giving away your territory? On the Ghostwatch, Captain Vasquez received an update from Earth Command. It came through quantum-encrypted channels that the aliens couldn't intercept. The message was brief. Phase 1 complete. All civilians evacuated. Military assets in position. Await Phase 2 authorization. What's Phase 2? Her navigator asked. Vasquez didn't answer because she didn't know. But something in her gut told her it would be significant. Back on New Haven's surface, Kryn soldiers explored the abandoned human cities. One squad entered what appeared to be a school building. Desks were still in place. Educational materials on the walls. Children's artwork displaying crude drawings of families and spaceships. The squad leader picked up a datapad left on a teacher's desk. It still had power. He accessed it and found lesson plans, student records, normal school information. Then he found something else, a file labeled Emergency Evacuation Procedures. He opened it. The document outlined exactly how to evacuate the entire colony in under 72 hours. Meeting points, transport assignments, supply distributions, everything planned down to the minute. At the bottom of the file was a date. The procedures had been written. 18 months ago, the squad leader immediately reported this to his commanders. The information traveled up the chain to Gronther within the hour. 18 months? Gronther repeated. They've been planning this for 18 months? Before the peace talks even began, his advisor confirmed. Commander, the humans knew this would happen. They knew the council would move against them. Gronther felt something unusual for him, unease. How could they know? Perhaps they didn't know specifically. Perhaps they just prepared for the possibility. What species prepares for total evacuation as standard procedure? Gronther demanded. What kind of thinking is that? His advisor had no answer. Dr. Emil Petrov sat in the cargo hold of a refugee transport. Surrounded by 200 other colonists from New Haven, he was a scientist who'd spent 5 years studying the unique geology of their colony world. Now he was leaving it all behind. A young woman next to him asked the question everyone was thinking. Where are we going? Earth, Petrov replied. Everyone's going to Earth. All of us? Millions of people? How can Earth hold everyone? Petrov had wondered the same thing. Then he'd seen the orbital images during their approach. Earth had changed. Massive underground cities had been constructed over the past decades. Facilities that could house populations 10 times larger than before. Humanity's homeworld had been preparing for this as well. We'll manage, Petrov said. Humans always do. But he had more information than most civilians. As a scientist, he'd received a classified briefing before evacuation. He knew about something called Protocol Exodus. Not the details, but enough to understand that this was more than a retreat. It was the opening move of a strategy the galaxy wasn't ready for, War Leader. Gronther stood on the bridge of Blood Triumph, reviewing reports from occupied human territory. His forces had secured every abandoned colony without firing a shot. They'd captured intact shipyards, full storage facilities, operational mining stations. The Galactic Council was celebrating. They'd won without casualties. Humanity had surrendered its colonial holdings without a fight. But Gronther couldn't shake his unease. Something was coming. He could feel it. Then simultaneously across 15 star systems, something happened. Every piece of human technology activated at once. Not weapons. Something else. Devices hidden in the infrastructure, built into the very foundations of the colonies, suddenly powered up and began transmitting. The signal was powerful enough to detect across multiple sectors. Not a message, not a communication, a countdown, 72 hours, the number displayed on every human computer, every datapad, every screen throughout the occupied territory. Counting down. No explanation. No demands. Just a timer. Gronther stared at the countdown on his own tactical display, which had been hijacked by the human signal. His communications officer tried to shut it down and failed. The countdown continued. What is this? Gronther demanded. What are they counting down to? Nobody had answers. But across the galaxy, every species that could detect the signal watched with growing fear. Then a single transmission came from somewhere in space. The origin point was impossible to trace. The message was short in standard galactic trade language and broadcast on every possible frequency. You demanded to know what humanity is capable of. You insisted we submit to your judgment. You wanted proof that we understood our place in this galaxy. Now you'll see. Now you'll understand. We suggest you leave our territory. What's coming next will change everything. You have 72 hours. The transmission ended. The countdown continued. On the Ghost Watch, Captain Vasquez finally understood. She looked at her crew and saw the same realization on their faces. They're not running, her weapons officer said quietly. They never were. No, Vasquez agreed. They were clearing the stage. 72 hours until something unprecedented. The galaxy watched the countdown with mounting terror. And deep in human space, on hidden vessels and secret facilities, humanity prepared to show exactly what they'd become. War Leader Gronther ordered his fleet to combat readiness. He didn't know what was coming, but he wouldn't be caught unprepared. He had no idea that preparation was meaningless against what humanity had built. Because sometimes the most terrifying response to a threat isn't violence. It's a countdown and a question that humanity was about to answer in a way the galaxy would never. Forget, what are humans really capable of when they stop trying to fit into someone else's rules? The timer kept counting down. 70-1 hours, 53 minutes, 12 seconds, and everyone waited. 40-8 hours remained on the countdown. The Galactic Council chamber on Concordia Prime was in chaos. Representatives from 12 species shouted at each other, their translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping arguments. Chancellor Brevix, the avian diplomat, raised his voice above the others. "We need to withdraw immediately. This could be anything. A weapon. A trap. We know nothing about human capabilities." Counselor Viridius hissed in contempt. "It's a bluff? An elaborate psychological trick to make us abandon territory we've rightfully secured. Humans are primitives playing at being dangerous. I refuse to retreat from empty colonies because of a timer." High Arbiter Quelix clicked his mandibles together sharply, demanding silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke carefully. "We've been attempting to contact Earth for 2 days. No response. We've tried diplomatic channels, emergency frequencies, even old first contact protocols. Nothing. It's as if humanity has gone completely silent." "Because they have nothing to say," Viridius argued. "They know they've lost. This countdown is their last desperate attempt to seem relevant." But other council members weren't convinced. The massive Dulmer representative pulsed worried colors. The crystalline delegate from Praxis 9 chimed uncertainly. Even species that had voted to confront humanity now seemed hesitant. "We've detected energy readings from the devices humans left behind," a technical advisor reported. "They're quantum-linked. All of them. Thousands of devices across occupied human space, all connected in a network pattern we don't fully understand." Viridius waved dismissively. "Quantum links are standard technology." "Not impressive." "The pattern isn't standard," the advisor continued nervously. "It covers an enormous volume of space, and the energy requirement suggests something far more complex than communication." Director Yuki Tanaka sat in a secure facility deep beneath Earth's surface, watching data streams on multiple screens. She was the head of human intelligence, responsible for gathering information about alien species and capabilities. She'd held this position for 15 years and never imagined she'd be coordinating humanity's most desperate gambit. Around her, analysts worked quietly at their stations. Maps displayed alien fleet positions. Intercepts showed Council communications. Everything the enemy did, Earth Command knew about within minutes. "The Council has intercepted some of our internal communications," an analyst reported. "They're trying to decode references to the Veil project." Tanaka nodded. "Let them try. They won't understand until it's too late. Director, we're tracking massive alien fleet movements. Not just Council forces. Pirates, independent raiders, rival empires. Everyone's moving toward human space." Tanaka pulled up the tactical display. Red markers filled the screen. Over 8,000 hostile ships converging on human territory. The largest military gathering in recorded galactic history. Every opportunistic species in the galaxy smelled blood and wanted a piece of Earth's colonies. "Like sharks to wounded prey," Tanaka muttered. "They have no idea what they're swimming into." Captain James Holloway commanded the stealth reconnaissance ship Wraith. His vessel was designed for one purpose: spy on alien forces without being detected. For weeks, he'd been trailing Council fleets, gathering intelligence. Now he watched from a distant observation point as hundreds of ships converged near the human colony of New Britannia. The aliens were arguing with each other. Council forces wanted other species to stay back. Pirates and raiders didn't care about Council authority. Everyone wanted to claim human worlds for themselves. "Captain, should we warn them?" his communications officer asked. Holloway almost laughed. "Warn them about what? We don't even know what's going to happen." "But they're walking into something. Shouldn't we at least tell them to leave?" "We did tell them," Holloway replied. "They received the same countdown everyone else did. They chose to ignore it." On New Haven, Kryn scientists had been studying the human devices for days. War leader Gronther personally oversaw the investigation, If this countdown represented a weapon, he wanted to know how to stop it. The lead scientist, a nervous being named Talvik, presented his findings. War leader, these devices are not weapons. At least not in any conventional sense. They don't contain explosives or energy projectors. Then what are they? Gronther demanded. They're quantum transceivers. Extremely powerful ones. Each device can communicate instantaneously with every other device in the network. But there's more. The pattern they form, the way they're distributed across space, it's not random. Talvik displayed a holographic model of human territory. Thousands of points of light represented the human devices. Lines connected them in a complex web. This is a geometric pattern, Talvik explained. Mathematically precise. The devices form nodes in a three-dimensional grid that covers all of human space and extends beyond it into neutral zones. A grid for what purpose? Gronther asked. Talvik hesitated. That's what concerns me, War Leader. This pattern matches theoretical models for dimensional manipulation, for creating barriers between normal space and subspace. Subspace. Gronther knew enough physics to be confused. That's the dimensional layer beneath normal space. Nothing exists there. It's just the medium that allows faster-than-light travel. That's what we thought, Talvik said quietly. But War Leader, I found something in the human database. Research notes, theoretical papers, all discussing something they call the Veil Project. They believe something does exist in subspace. Something dangerous. Gronther stared at the scientist. You're saying humans think there are creatures living in subspace? That's insane. Every species has explored subspace for millennia. We've never detected anything. Perhaps we weren't looking carefully enough, Talvik suggested. Or perhaps humans discovered something we missed. Before Gronther could respond, alarms sounded throughout his ship. Emergency broadcasts filled the command channel. All Council forces, priority alert. Kryn's science team has discovered the nature of human countdown. They're attempting dimensional manipulation. I repeat, humans are planning to collapse dimensional barriers. This technology is forbidden under Council law. Probability of catastrophic failure is extremely high. The message sparked panic across the galaxy. Species that remembered ancient warnings about dimensional experiments began recalling their fleets. Half the alien forces surrounding human space immediately jumped to faster than light and fled, but thousands remained, including Gronther's fleet, including pirates who didn't understand the danger, including species too proud to retreat. The countdown continued. 12 hours remaining. Director Tanaka received word that the aliens had figured out part of the plan. She allowed herself a small smile. They think they know, but they don't understand. An aide approached nervously. Director, the Council is broadcasting warnings about dimensional collapse. They're telling the galaxy we're going to destroy ourselves. Good, Tanaka said. Fear will keep some of them away. The stubborn ones who stay will learn the truth soon enough. And what is the truth? The aide asked. Tanaka looked at him steadily. That humanity doesn't make the same mistakes as other species. We learn from them. Engineer Nadia Volkov worked in a facility on Earth's moon, monitoring the quantum network from a secure control center. She designed much of the system herself over 5 years of secret development. Now she watched as alien scientists poked at her creation, trying to understand it. They were close to figuring it out, but not close enough. They'd discovered the dimensional manipulation aspect. They'd realized it involved subspace, but they hadn't understood the why or the how. They're broadcasting warnings about dimensional collapse, her assistant reported. They think we're trying to tear a hole between dimensions. Volkov shook her head. We're not tearing anything. We're building something. Something that should have existed millions of years ago. Ambassador Rita Okonkwo stood in Earth's Global Command Center, preparing for her final broadcast to the galaxy. She'd spent her entire career trying to make peace with alien species. She'd believed in cooperation and mutual understanding, then she'd seen the truth. The galaxy didn't want cooperation. It wanted dominance. and humanity would either submit or be destroyed. Well, humanity had chosen a third option. "Ambassador, you're on in 5 minutes," a technician informed her. Okonkwo reviewed her speech one final time. Admiral Webb stood beside her, his face grim but determined. "Are we doing the right thing?" Okonkwo asked quietly. "We're doing the only thing," Webb replied. "The galaxy forced our hand. Now they'll live with the consequences." The countdown reached 10 hours. Across human space, the quantum devices began generating increasing amounts of energy. Alien sensors detected the buildup. Scientists frantically tried to calculate what would happen when the countdown reached 0. War leader Gronther received an urgent message from his homeworld. The Kryn High Command ordered him to withdraw immediately. The risk was too great. Whatever humans were planning could threaten his entire fleet, but Gronther had never retreated in his life. He looked at the occupied human colonies, at the territory his forces had claimed. He thought about the glory of conquest and the shame of running from a human timer. "We stay," he announced. "If humans want to destroy themselves with experimental technology, let them. We'll be here to pick up the pieces." Not all his captains agreed, but they followed orders. The Kryn fleet remained in position. So did several other species. Over 2,000 alien ships stayed within human territory, refusing to retreat. The countdown reached 6 hours. Director Tanaka opened a communication channel to Ambassador Okonkwo. "Everything is ready. All civilians are secured. Military assets are in position. The network is fully charged and stable. Any last-minute problems?" Okonkwo asked. "None. The alien fleets are exactly where we predicted. Some retreated, but enough stayed. Enough to witness." "To witness and understand," Okonkwo said. "Let's hope the lesson sticks." She walked to the broadcast center. Behind her, through reinforced windows, she could see massive structures on Earth's surface. Towers that reached into the sky, covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. They hummed with barely contained energy. The countdown reached 1 hour. Ambassador Okonkwo began her broadcast. Every functional receiver in the galaxy picked up her signal. She appeared calm and professional, but her words carried the weight of finality. "People of the galaxy, this is Ambassador Rida Okonkwo of Earth. For decades, humanity has tried to integrate peacefully into galactic society. We've shared our knowledge. We've followed council laws. We've attempted to be good neighbors." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We were met with suspicion, restrictions, and ultimately threats of annihilation. The Galactic Council demanded our submission or promised our destruction. We refused to submit. But we also refused to fight a conventional war we cannot win." Behind her, the towers glowed brighter. "So we chose a third path. Humanity has made a discovery. A terrible discovery about the nature of space itself, about what exists in the layers beneath normal reality. We found warnings, ancient warnings left by civilizations long dead. Warnings about a threat the current galaxy has forgotten or never knew existed." Across the galaxy, billions watched her broadcast. Some confused, some afraid, some still dismissive. "In 10 minutes, we will activate the Veil Project. This system will demonstrate what humanity learned while you believed us primitive. It will show you what we've been preparing for. And it will protect you from a danger you don't even know exists." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "After this, any foreign vessel remaining in human territory will be considered an act of war. We strongly advise immediate withdrawal. What happens next will reshape this galaxy." The broadcast ended. The countdown continued. 5 minutes. War leader Gronther watched the broadcast with growing unease. Something in the human ambassador's voice and her eyes suggested this wasn't a bluff. This was a warning from someone who knew terrible truths. "War leader, perhaps we should," an officer began. "Hold position," Gronther ordered. But his voice lacked conviction. 3 minutes, Director Tanaka gave the final authorization codes. Engineer Volkov confirmed all systems were ready. Admiral Webb ordered all human military forces to phase. 2 positions. 1 minute. The countdown ticked through its final seconds. Every human device across human space vibrated with building energy. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential. Zero. Everything activated at once. The countdown reached zero and reality changed. War leader. Grunthar felt it first as a vibration that made his armored plates itch. Then the tactical displays on his ship's bridge went wild. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Space itself was doing something that shouldn't be possible outside the Blood Triumph's viewports. The stars began to shimmer. Not like heat distortion, more like reality was becoming uncertain about its own existence. What's happening? Grunthar demanded. His science officer, Talvik, stared at his instruments with absolute terror. War leader, dimensional barriers are forming all around us. The humans, they're not collapsing the barriers between dimensions. They're reinforcing them. Every human device, thousands of them scattered across human territory, erupted with synchronized energy. Beams of light, visible even in space, connected device to device. The pattern Talvik had identified earlier became visible as glowing lines crisscrossed the void. A barrier began to form. It started as barely visible shimmer at the edges of human space, then grew stronger, more solid. It didn't look like a force field or energy shield. It looked like space itself was crystallizing, becoming something other than what it had been. Readings are impossible, Talvik reported, his voice shaking. The barrier is altering the dimensional structure of space. Physics inside the field is changing? War leader Grunthar watched the barrier expand toward his fleet. Weapons, target those human devices. Destroy them before this field reaches us. His gunners opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams lanced out toward the nearest human installations on New Haven. The weapons fired normally. The beams traveled through space as expected. Then they hit the barrier. The energy simply dissipated. Not reflected. Not absorbed. The weapons fire just stopped existing when it touched the shimmering field. War leader, weapons are ineffective against the barrier, Tactical reported. Use missiles. Kinetic weapons, anything. More weapons launched. Missiles with nuclear warheads, railgun projectiles, plasma charges. All the firepower of the Kryn Empire's finest warships. Everything that touched the barrier vanished harmlessly. The field continued to expand. And Grunthar realized with horror that it wasn't moving around his fleet. It was moving through his fleet. His ship sat directly in the path of the expanding barrier. All vessels, emergency retreat. Maximum speed. Get out of human space now. But it was too late. The barrier swept over the Blood Triumph like a wave of crystallized reality. Grunthar braced for impact, for explosion, for death. Nothing happened. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then Grunthar started noticing the changes. War leader, faster than light drive is offline, his navigator reported. Not damaged. Just not functioning. The calculations don't work anymore. Engineering says our main weapons array won't charge, another officer added. Power is there, but the energy projection systems aren't responding. Grunthar looked at his tactical display. It showed 2,000 alien ships, all trapped inside the barrier with his fleet. Outside the barrier, the rest of the alien forces that had fled earlier were frantically trying to scan what had happened. Can we communicate outside the barrier? Grunthar asked. Barely. Transmissions are getting through, but heavily degraded. It's like the barrier filters certain types of energy. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in shock as human space transformed. The barrier was visible from light years away, a shimmering bubble of altered space, surrounding everything humanity claimed as territory. Chancellor Brevik stood in the council chamber, staring at the readings. They've sealed themselves off, completely isolated their entire civilization. High Arbiter Quellix's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep distress. But they've trapped Grunthar's forces inside with them. Over 2,000 alien ships. Hostages? Counselor Viridius hissed. They've taken hostages. Then something else happened that made the situation infinitely worse. The barrier flickered. Just for 3 seconds, its stability wavered. And in those 3 seconds, scanners detected something that made experienced. Military commanders across the galaxy freeze in terror through the flickering barrier. Sensors briefly penetrated into subspace, the dimensional layer beneath normal reality. And subspace wasn't empty. Shapes moved in that impossible realm. Massive shapes. Incomprehensible geometries that hurt to perceive even through filtered sensor data. Things that had no right to exist, that defied physical laws, that watched the galaxy with alien intelligence and endless hunger for 3 seconds. The galaxy glimpsed what humans had found. What humans had been trying to warn them about. Then the barrier solidified. Hiding the view once more. Dead silence filled the council chamber. Chancellor Brevix's feathers stood straight up in primal fear. Even Viridius seemed shaken, his usual arrogance replaced with something that might have been doubt. What were those things? Someone whispered. High Arbiter Quelix, who had lived for 3 centuries, spoke in a hollow voice. I don't know, but I've seen ancient texts, warnings from dead civilizations. They spoke of something called the harvest, of beings that rose from beneath space to consume advanced life. We thought them myths. They're not myths, Chancellor Brevix said quietly. The humans knew. They tried to tell us. Inside the barrier, aboard the Blood Triumph, War Leader Gronther had seen the shapes too. His instruments had captured 3 seconds of data from subspace. Before the barrier sealed, Talvik studied the readings with shaking hands. War Leader, those entities in subspace. They're real. And they're enormous. One of them is larger than a planet. I'm detecting hundreds of them, maybe thousands in the subspace layers near real space. Why have we never detected them before? Gronther demanded. Because we never looked, Talvik replied. Standard subspace sensors are designed to navigate faster than light travel. They filter out anything that isn't useful for that purpose. These beings exist in frequency ranges we've been ignoring for millennia. Gronther felt something he'd rarely experienced. Fear, not of death in battle. Fear of something vast and incomprehensible that rendered all his military prowess meaningless. A transmission came through from human sources. President Thomas Adler appeared on the communication screen. He was an older human, gray-haired but sharp-eyed. He looked tired but determined. War Leader Gronther. I'm President Adler of the United Earth Government. We need to talk. Gronther wanted to make demands, to threaten, to reassert control, but the words died in his throat. He simply nodded. President Adler continued. 30 years ago, human explorers found ruins on the 4th planet we colonized. Ancient ruins from a civilization that existed millions of years before any current galactic species. The ruins contained warnings, mathematical proofs, evidence of something that lives in subspace. The president pulled up data on the screen. We call them the subspace predators for lack of a better name. They're not individual creatures. They're more like a phenomenon. An ecosystem that exists in dimensional layers beneath normal space. They feed on something we don't fully understand yet. But we know they notice advanced civilizations. And every few million years, they rise into real space for what the ancient warnings called the harvest. Gronther listened, his earlier anger fading into grim attention. The last harvest happened approximately 6 million years ago, Adler continued. It wiped out every advanced civilization in this region of space. The ruins we found were left by survivors who fled. They left warnings for whoever came next. Why didn't you tell the council? Gronther asked. We tried, Adler replied. 10 years ago, we brought evidence to the council. We were dismissed as primitives seeing patterns in noise. We were told to stop wasting everyone's time with superstitious nonsense. Gronther remembered the incident vaguely. Some human presentation that the council had ignored. So we prepared alone, Adler said. We developed technology to detect the predators. We built monitoring systems, and we realized something terrible. The predators are becoming active again. Another harvest is coming. We estimate 20 years until they rise into real space in force. The president's face hardened. We built the Veil Project to protect against them. The barrier reinforces dimensional boundaries, making it harder for the predators to cross into real space. It's not a perfect defense, but it's better than nothing. But you've trapped my forces inside your barrier, Gronther said. Because you wouldn't leave when we warned you, Adler replied. War leader, I'm not happy about this situation. But you forced our hand. We needed to activate the barrier on schedule. Our calculations show the predators are already testing the dimensional boundaries. We couldn't wait any longer. Gronther wanted to call this human paranoid or delusional, but he'd seen those shapes in subspace. His own sensors had confirmed their existence. What happens now? Gronther asked. Now we survive, Adler said simply. The barrier will hold for approximately 200 years. During that time, humanity will develop weapons to fight the predators. We'll prepare for the coming harvest. As for your forces, war leader, you have a choice. What choice? Help us prepare, or we'll intern you as prisoners of war until the barrier comes down. Either way, you're stuck here with us for the next 2 centuries. The transmission ended? Gronther sat in his command chair, trying to process everything. His empire was outside the barrier. His fleet was trapped inside. And humanity claimed they'd done this to protect the galaxy from monsters outside the barrier. The Galactic Council faced a crisis like nothing in history. Species that had been ready to destroy humanity now scrambled to verify the human claims about subspace predators. Research teams reopened ancient archives. Scientists recalibrated their instruments to scan subspace at frequencies previously ignored. And slowly, terribly, they began confirming what humans had discovered. The predators were real. They were enormous. And they were starting to wake. Chancellor Brevix addressed an emergency council session. We've been fools. Humanity tried to warn us and we threatened them with extinction. They've now sealed themselves away to prepare for a threat we didn't believe existed. We should be grateful, an advisor suggested. Their barrier protects them. The predators can't get through the dimensional reinforcement. But it also means humanity will spend 2 centuries developing technology while isolated from the rest of us, Viridius pointed out, his tone lacking its usual arrogance. When they emerge, they'll be far more advanced than any council species. If they emerge, another council member said, they've trapped themselves along with Gronther's forces. What if the barrier fails? What if they can't survive isolation? High Arbiter Quelix raised his forearms. Speculation is pointless. Humanity has made their choice. Now we must make ours. Do we prepare for this harvest they warned us about? Or do we continue pretending the threat doesn't exist? The vote was unanimous. The Council would begin immediate preparation for potential subspace incursions. Every species would contribute resources to studying the predators and developing defenses inside the barrier. War leader Gronther called a meeting of all trapped alien commanders. Representatives from 4 species gathered via holographic conference, all wearing expressions of shock and confusion. We have a decision to make, Gronther told them. We're trapped here for 200 years. The humans claim they're preparing to fight subspace predators. We can either help them or spend 2 centuries as prisoners. A pirate captain spoke up. What if they're lying? What if this is all an elaborate trick? I saw the sensor readings, Gronther replied. Those entities in subspace were real. Either humans are telling the truth about preparing for them, or we're trapped with insane primitives. Either way, cooperation seems wiser than conflict. One by one, the other commanders agreed. They would work with humanity. Not because they trusted humans, but because they had no other choice. Ambassador Rita Okonkwo received the alien commander's response. She allowed herself a moment of relief before the weight of responsibility settled back on her shoulders. Admiral Marcus Webb stood beside her. They've agreed to cooperate. That's more than I hoped for. They agreed because they're terrified, Okonkwo said. But fear is a start. Maybe we can build something better from it. President Adler made one final broadcast to the galaxy. His message was carried across every frequency, transmitted through the barrier to every species that would listen. People of the galaxy, humanity has isolated itself. Not from cowardice, not from hostility, but from necessity. The harvest is coming. We estimate 20 years until the subspace predators rise in force. We've given ourselves 200 years inside the barrier to prepare. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. We hope the barrier protects you as well. That the reinforced dimensional boundaries limit predator activity in this region of space. But we don't know for certain. So we urge you to prepare. Study the threat. Develop defenses. Build weapons that work against non-physical entities. His expression softened slightly. When we emerge from the barrier, we hope to find a galaxy that's ready to stand together against the harvest. Not as enemies, but as allies facing a common threat. The peace talk collapsed. But perhaps from this crisis, real peace can grow. The transmission ended. The barrier remained. Humanity had cut itself off from the galaxy for 2 centuries, but they hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They'd bought it time to prepare for a threat beyond anyone's imagination. War leader. Granther looked out at the strange stars visible through the barrier's shimmer. He was trapped in enemy territory, facing 2 centuries of exile from his empire, but deep in his warrior's heart, he felt something unexpected, purpose. He'd always fought for glory and conquest. Now he would fight for survival against enemies that made his previous battles seem like children's games. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's terrifying reply to the Council's ultimatum wasn't war or surrender. It was a warning that forced everyone to face a truth they'd been ignoring. And in the dark between dimensions, ancient predators stirred, sensing changes in the barriers between worlds. Hungry for the harvest that was coming, 6 months passed since the barrier activated. Life inside human space had changed in ways nobody could have predicted when the countdown began. War leader. Granther stood in what used to be a human military academy on Earth. Now it served as a joint training facility, where humans and trapped aliens learned to work together. The adjustment had been difficult. Granther had spent his entire life seeing humans as primitives. Now he studied their tactics and found himself impressed despite his pride. An instructor named Colonel Drake led the session. She was explaining human military philosophy to a mixed group of warriors from 4 different species. Most galactic military doctrine focuses on ship-to-ship combat, Drake said. Energy weapons, missiles, fleet formations, all designed for conventional warfare in normal space. She pulled up a holographic display showing one of the subspace predators. Even in recording, the thing was disturbing to look at. Its geometry hurt the eyes. These entities don't care about conventional weapons. They exist partially outside normal physics. So we've had to develop entirely new combat theories. A Kryn officer raised a clawed hand. How do you fight something that doesn't fully exist in our dimension? Dimensional anchoring, Drake replied. We're developing weapons that force these entities to fully manifest in real space. Once they're fully physical, they become vulnerable to attack. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Granther listened carefully. The human approach was innovative, aggressive, and frankly terrifying in its implications. They weren't just preparing to defend against the predators. They were preparing to hunt them across the facility. Ambassador Rita Okonkwo met with representatives of the trapped alien forces. The relationship had improved from hostile to wary cooperation. But trust remained fragile. My government wants to know when you'll let our ships leave. A Dalmor representative pulsed in worried colors. Okonkwo kept her expression neutral. The barrier won't come down for another 199 years. You knew this when we activated it. But our families, the Dalmor continued. Our lives were outside. We're trapped here while our empires forget us. We're all making sacrifices, Okonkwo replied. Humanity has cut itself off from the entire galaxy. We understand your frustration, but the barrier protects all of us. An avian officer from the species similar to Chancellor Brevik spoke up. Some of us are starting to wonder if the predators are really the threat you claimed. We've been here 6 months and nothing has attacked. Okonkwo pulled up recent data. Because the barrier is working. But look at these readings. Every day, the predators test the dimensional boundaries. They're looking for weaknesses. Without the barrier, they would have already broken through in several locations. The readings showed dozens of attempted incursions, all stopped by the reinforced dimensional barriers. The aliens studied the data with growing concern. "You're safe because of human technology," Okonkwo said firmly. "Remember that before you complain about being trapped." In a research facility on Earth's moon, engineer Nadia Volkov worked with a mixed team of human and alien scientists. They were developing the next generation of dimensional weapons. Dr. Kenji Watanabe, a human physicist, explained their latest discovery to the group. "We've confirmed something disturbing. The predators are intelligent. Not like us, but they can learn. They're studying the barrier, trying to understand how to break it." A Kryn scientist named Talvik examined the data. He'd become one of their most valuable contributors, applying his species' advanced mathematics to human dimensional theory. "If they break through," Talvik said, "how much warning will we have?" "Minutes at most," Watanabe replied. "That's why we need better early warning systems. And weapons that can deploy instantly." Volkov pulled up schematics for a new device. "We're calling it a dimensional anchor mine. It can be placed in subspace and will automatically trigger if it detects predator movement. When activated, it forces the predator to fully manifest in real space, making it vulnerable," Talvik concluded. "Clever, but how do we place mines in subspace without going there ourselves?" "We're working on that part," Volkov admitted. The research continued. Human creativity combining with alien knowledge to create something neither could have achieved alone. Outside the barrier, the galaxy was changing too. The Galactic Council had transformed from a political body into a military coordination center. Every species contributed resources to preparing for the harvest. Chancellor Brevix led a diplomatic mission to ancient archives on a dozen worlds, searching for any information about previous harvests. What they found was terrifying. Every advanced civilization in this region of space was wiped out 6 million years ago, Brevix reported to the Council. "We found evidence on 17 different worlds, all destroyed simultaneously by entities matching the description of subspace predators." High Arbiter Quelix listened grimly. "How did any life survive?" "Primitive species were ignored," Brevix explained. "The predators seem to target advanced technology, particularly anything that manipulates dimensional barriers. They feed on some aspect of technological civilization we don't fully understand." Counselor Viridius, who had been humbled by the crisis, spoke carefully. "Then by advancing technologically, we've made ourselves prey." "Yes," Brevix confirmed. "And humanity discovered this before any of us. They tried to warn us, and we threatened them with extinction for their trouble." The Council sat in uncomfortable silence, each member contemplating their own guilt. "We need to work with them," Quelix finally said. "When the barrier comes down in 2 centuries, humanity will either be our greatest allies or our most dangerous enemies. We should start building bridges now." The Council voted to establish a permanent communication relay at the barrier's edge. Messages could pass through, though degraded. It was a start inside the barrier. A crisis erupted that tested the fragile cooperation between humans and aliens. A human mining colony near the barrier's edge detected a weakness in the dimensional reinforcement. Something was trying to break through. Not just testing anymore? Actually trying to force entry. Admiral Marcus Webb coordinated the response. "All available forces to Section 17. This is not a drill." War leader Gronther's fleet moved into position alongside human vessels. It felt strange working with former enemies, but the threat was real enough to overcome old prejudices. The barrier buckled and something pushed through. Not one of the massive predators they'd seen before. Something smaller. A scout organism, if such a thing could be called small. It was still the size of a building, a writhing mass of impossible geometry that hurt to perceive directly. "Target locked," a human weapons officer reported. "Firing dimensional anchor." A new type of weapon discharged. It didn't shoot energy or projectiles. It shot mathematics, quantum calculations that forced reality to behave in specific ways. The predator creature screamed, though sound shouldn't exist in vacuum. It solidified, becoming fully physical for the first time. "Now conventional weapons," Webb ordered. Human and alien forces opened fire simultaneously. The Predator died hard, thrashing and tearing at nearby asteroids. Before finally dissipating into quantum particles, the engagement lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, both human and alien crews were shaking. Gronther contacted Webb directly. "Your new weapons work." "That's good." "But it took combined firepower from 20 ships to kill one scout," Webb replied. "The real Predators are 1,000 times larger. We need better weapons." "Agreed," Gronther said. Then, after a pause, "Admiral, I owe you an apology. My species saw yours as primitive and aggressive. We were wrong. You were the only one smart enough to recognize the real threat." Webb considered this. "War leader, your apology is accepted. But understand something. When the barrier comes down, humanity will emerge changed. We're adapting to fight predators. We're enhancing ourselves, our technology, our very way of thinking. What comes out of this barrier might not be the humanity you encountered before. Will you be monsters?" Gronther asked bluntly. "We'll be survivors," Webb replied. "Whether that makes us monsters depends on your perspective." The conversation ended, but it planted seeds of both hope and fear in Gronther's mind. Years passed. 10 years, 20, 50, the cooperation inside the barrier deepened. Human and alien children were born who knew no other life. The barrier became normal. Technology advanced at an incredible pace. The combination of who? Man innovation and alien knowledge created breakthroughs neither could have achieved separately. Dimensional anchoring improved. Weapons became more effective. Detection systems could predict predator movement hours in advance instead of minutes, but the humans were changing too. They began genetic modification programs to enhance themselves for dimensional combat. Cybernetic implants that allowed direct interface with dimensional equipment became common. Some humans barely looked human anymore. War leader Gronther, now elderly but enhanced with human technology to extend his life, watched these changes with mixed feelings. The humans were becoming powerful. Perhaps too powerful. He met with Admiral Webb, also elderly despite enhancements, in a garden on Earth designed to accommodate multiple species. "Sometimes I wonder if we survived the wrong threat," Gronther admitted. "The predators are terrifying, but enhanced humanity might be worse for the galaxy." Webb smiled sadly. "You think we'll emerge from this barrier and conquer everyone? Won't you?" "We'll emerge and defend everyone," Webb corrected. "Gronther, the harvest is coming in less than 20 years now. Our projections show simultaneous predator emergence across multiple sectors. The galaxy isn't ready. Even with all their preparation, the Council forces won't survive without help. And humanity will provide that help? We're changing ourselves into weapons against an enemy the galaxy can't fight alone. Yes, we're becoming dangerous. We have to, but our goal isn't conquest. It's survival. For everyone." Gronther wanted to believe him. After 5 decades of working alongside humans, he'd seen their determination, their creativity, their surprising compassion despite their capacity for violence. "What will you ask in return?" Gronther asked. "When you save the galaxy from the harvest?" Webb looked at the stars visible through the barrier. "We'll ask to be trusted, to be treated as equals instead of threats, to finally have the peace we tried to negotiate before all this began. And if the Council refuses, then we'll protect them anyway," Webb said. "Because that's what we do. Humanity doesn't abandon people to monsters, even people who threaten to destroy us." 199 years after the barrier activated, preparations reached their final stage. Every human and alien inside knew the barrier would fall soon. Outside, the galaxy waited with a mixture of hope and fear. The predators were active now, even outside the barrier. Smaller incursions happened monthly. Council forces fought them with mixed success. Casualties were mounting. The galaxy needed humanity's help desperately. President Adler. The title passed through several successors, but the office remained the same. Prepared the final broadcast before emergence. "People of the galaxy, in 24 hours the barrier comes down. What emerges will be different from what you remember. We've spent 2 centuries preparing for war against enemies that exist beyond normal reality. We've changed ourselves to become that weapon." She paused, letting her words register. "But we haven't forgotten why we did this. We isolated ourselves to protect you, to buy time for everyone to prepare. The harvest begins in 18 years. When it does, humanity will stand with you. Not as conquerors, not as masters, as allies who've paid a terrible price to ensure the galaxy survives. We're coming home," she continued, "and we're bringing an army built to fight nightmares. Trust us, work with us. Together we can survive what's coming." The transmission ended. The galaxy held its breath. 24 hours later, the barrier began to fail. The dimensional reinforcement that had protected human space for 2 centuries slowly dissolved. Energy readings went off every scale as the barrier collapsed in a cascade of quantum effects. Ships from every council species gathered at the border of human space. Not to attack. To witness what emerged was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Human vessels came through first. They were unlike any ships the galaxy had seen. Sleek and organic-looking, they seemed to exist partially in multiple dimensions at once. Where conventional ships were solid metal, these looked like they might phase out of reality at any moment. Then came the mixed fleets. Kryn ships redesigned with human technology. Vessels from 4 other species, all enhanced and modified. 200 years of cooperation had created something new. Finally, the humans themselves became visible via video transmission. Some looked mostly normal, just healthier and enhanced. Others had been modified extensively, with cybernetic implants, genetic changes, adaptations that made them look almost alien. Admiral Marcus Webb, now nearly ancient but kept alive by advanced technology, broadcast from his flagship. "We're ready," he said simply. "We're not alone anymore. The harvest is coming in 18 years, but this time the prey has teeth." Behind the human fleets, massive constructs became visible. Weapons platforms that dwarfed anything the Council had built. Dimensional anchoring stations that could force predators to manifest across entire sectors. An arsenal built specifically to fight things that shouldn't exist. War leader Gronther, also ancient and enhanced, stood beside Webb on the flagship's bridge. He broadcast his own message to the Kryn Empire. "I am Gronther, who entered human space 200 years ago as an enemy. I emerge now as an ally. Humanity has earned my respect and my loyalty. They've built an army to fight horrors you can't imagine. When the harvest comes, stand with them. Fight alongside them. Because they're our best hope for survival." The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the combined human-alien fleet moved into position. Defensive formations spread across multiple sectors. Early warning systems activated. Dimensional anchor weapons deployed in strategic locations. Chancellor Brevix, descendant of the original diplomat, addressed the Galactic Council. "We were fools 200 years ago. We saw humanity's strength as a threat rather than a gift. We forced them to isolate themselves to save us. Now they return not for revenge, but to stand beside us against an enemy we still barely understand." The peace talks collapsed, Brevix continued. But from that collapse came something better. Unity forged through crisis. Cooperation born from necessity. When the harvest begins, we'll face it together. Human and alien. Former enemies now allies. The Council voted unanimously to welcome humanity back as full members. More than members. As leaders of the joint defense force that would face the coming harvest on Earth, children played under skies they'd only seen in recordings for generations. The barrier was gone. They were part of the galaxy again, but everyone knew this peace was temporary. In 18 years, maybe less, the real war would begin. The predators would rise from subspace in force, hungry for the harvest they'd been denied for millions of years. This time, they would face something unexpected. Prey that had become predators themselves. A species that refused to go quietly into extinction. And a galaxy finally united against a common threat. Admiral Webb stood on Earth's surface, looking up at stars he hadn't seen directly in 2 centuries. Beside him, war leader Gronther did the same. Do you think we can win? Gronther asked. I think we can fight, Webb replied. 200 years ago we couldn't. Now we can. That's progress. And if we lose? Then we lose fighting together instead of dying divided? That matters. Gronther's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or agreement. Humans are insane, but I'm glad you're on our side. We always were, Webb said. The Council just took 200 years to realize it. Far away in the depths of subspace, ancient predators sensed the barrier's collapse. They felt the dimensional anchors activating across multiple sectors. They detected the weapons humanity had built specifically to fight them. For the first time in millions of years, the harvest faced uncertainty. The prey had changed. They'd adapted. They'd become something dangerous. The predators didn't fear exactly. They weren't capable of fear as humans understood it, but they recognized the problem. The next harvest would not be easy. In the galaxy above, millions of beings prepared for a war unlike any in history. Species that had competed for resources now shared technology freely. Ancient enemies worked side by side building defenses, all because humanity had forced them to recognize a truth they'd been ignoring. The universe was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Survival required unity, and sometimes the most terrifying response to a threat wasn't violence. It was a warning that forced everyone to face reality and prepare together. The peace talks had collapsed 200 years ago. What rose from those ashes was something far more powerful than any treaty. Hope, unity, and humanity's stubborn refusal to let the galaxy die. Without a fight, the harvest was coming. But for the first time in millions of years, advanced life would be ready. And Earth's children played under alien suns, not knowing that their species had bought the galaxy 2 centuries of preparation time, that their parents and grandparents had transformed themselves into weapons to protect worlds they'd never seen. They just knew the stars were beautiful. That aliens were friends and teachers and sometimes funny-looking neighbors. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had made sure of that. And somewhere in the dark, a countdown began again. 18 years until the harvest, but this time everyone was counting together.